to us. Nate's our technical director in Queens, but not at Gotham. I've left the door to the shop open, so we may hear some phones. But welcome, Jeff. And we're here with Jeff to talk about the DSR4 and to just kind of catch up. I was telling Jeff earlier, this is completely selfish because I want to learn about the DSR4. And so, I guess really before we get into it, tell us and tell our audience a little bit about, who you are and your background and how you got to be a sound mixer.
Jeff DesLauriers. Originally kind of grew up in North Dakota and ended up going to recording school right out of high school in Tempe, Arizona at the Recording Conservatory of Recording Arts and Sciences. After that, I ended up in Minneapolis. Like a lot of us, started this whole thing to kind of make records and found our way over to location sound for various and sundry reasons. But for myself, it started in the record industry, and I spent a good deal of time just in the Minneapolis scene recording. Was lucky enough to get in with some pretty good local recording engineers.
I heard there's a few musicians that come from Minneapolis.
Yeah, one or two. Yeah. I lucked out getting to work with Prince a few times and Morris Day and the Time, and Pamela McNeil. There's some great artists that continue to come out. We just have an awesome music scene here. So that's how I got started, and I learned a lot about just sound and mics in general and signal flow and gain structuring and all that, and that really kind of set the stage for my understanding of audio engineering in general, and from there it was just your standard, hey, do you want to do sound for my short film?
I want to ask you some questions, but I also want to make sure everybody knows we are in fact live. And so anybody that has any questions at any time, I'm looking at a monitor, I'm looking at a few monitors, but one of them shows me your questions, and I'll ask them. And so I have a question myself, and I think you were going to get to it organically. But the transition from music to location sound, tell me about some of the challenges or what wasn't a challenge. Tell me about that.
Right. Well, the biggest one for me right out the gate was time. And not having any in production in location sound. They have to set up the mic, route it properly, gain structure it properly to your recording medium, and hit record and make sure everything is 100% solid in a very, very tight window of time. Whereas in the music studio, depending on the budget for the record, we would have a lot of time, sometimes a week, just to get drum sounds,
right?
Or basic, just to, let's try mics for 3 days on the drums, that kind of a thing. A lot more brush strokey stuff, like, let's try this mic on the kick drum versus that mic, this preamp versus that preamp. So that was the biggest transitional, I would say, stressor for me, was just like, okay, we're not doing that. we're recording as clean of sound as we possibly can get in this environment, and we're doing it now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I talking to people that made the transition from music, one of the big things is when you're recording, it's all about sound. And of course, when you do sound for picture, I mean, just look at how many people are on the crew that deal with picture versus how many people are deal with sound. Was that like also part of sort of getting used to it for you?
Yeah, just generally the different. I imagine you're, talking about the different.
Yeah, I mean,
members, the different. Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, it was like, and again, this is just somebody that comes at it from sound, but like, why would you pick this location? just
Oh, I
because
see what you're
you
saying.
know what I
Yeah.
mean. Like I
Yeah.
get it, it
Yep.
looks good,
Yep.
but isn't sound important? And it's like, when you're
Yes.
recording sound, that's like for an album, that's all you're doing is the sound.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh my God. In a very controlled environment. I mean, these recording studios, when you're in a good studio, I mean, a lot of times the structure of the recording studio is on a complete separate foundation, even from isolated from the rest of the building that it's in. So you have this perfect control over everything. And yeah, that was you know, a big struggle in the beginning too, is like my brain was trained that this is what I was able to get. You know what I mean? That I should be able to get this ultimately clean, pristine sound and have the time to make these adjustments and to get it. And you're totally right. It was like, well, we're filming next to a freeway, and that's just the way it is going to be, because it looks freaking amazing where we're at, and we need to be here for the story. But I have to do what I need to do, or what I can do, to get as clean a sound as I possibly can. Yeah. So that was definitely, absolutely.
And how did you? So how did you do that? Like, did you have somebody that kind of mentored you, or were you just thrown into it? And tell me about that. You mentioned somebody said, "Hey, come
Yeah.
do sound over here," and what was that like?
That was more of just a friend of mine who was, standard issue friend, a friend of mine who's like, I'm making a movie. We need a sound recordist. They didn't know anything about, that I'm aware of anyway, about about sound and what we do. They just knew that I did some audio post-production work, and they liked what I did with sound editing and dialogue editing. And they kind of thought that because that turned out good, that maybe come do the actual recording of the sound on location, on set, for my next film. And so I got thrown into the fire. It was straight away like, oh my God, I can't control any of this. How do I get good sound with this? And it was the first. I learned really quickly on the first project that you have to choose your battles, pick your battles, because it's like, you know we're going to be where we're going to be, and I have to like come to terms mentally with that. There's just going to be the plane, or the semi driving by, or whatever HVAC or whatever extraneous noise is there. It's just going to be there, and I have to do whatever I can to get as good a sound as I possibly can. And in those situations, as sound mixers, we're always like, can I start troubleshooting? Can I turn the air conditioning off? Can we move a little bit away from the freeway? Or do we have to be right here? Start getting diplomatic with other departments and see where that can get you.
Absolutely. I wonder if you can give us a sense of how your post background at that point helped inform which battles to pick on set.
Oh man, hugely. I would say the biggest one was that's kind of where I cut my teeth in audio post production, was editing dialogue. So just receiving the sound that was recorded, and you know immediately when it was the sound recordist or sound mixer's fault, and immediately when it was just, there was nothing they could do about it. So you learn quickly. Like, I took that knowledge based upon what I heard in the actual recorded dialogue tracks, and I was able to actually bring that on to when I started location sound, and being like, okay, well, I've learned through my sound editing, that this is not something that is in my control, but this is. So I'm going to talk to production and see if we can work on that together to make it better. Yeah.
Nice. That must have been a huge help, and that also makes you more
It
efficient.
was, yeah.
I wonder also if you leave notes for your post production team, whether or not you've ever met them.
Yes, yes. That's the other thing, is I've gone. I don't know. I know a lot of people do. So kudos to all the sound mixers out there that have a good communication, a good open relationship with post production, and because that's in my opinion the way to do it. Because ultimately I'm serving post production, and post production is serving the editor ultimately. And the more I can do to work with the post production team to make sure that they're getting what they need to complete the vision that they're looking for, you know what I mean, that they're striving for, the better off we're all going to be. And I truly think there's going to be a better end result at the end of that. So yeah.
Good. I mean, look, we're going to skip a whole bunch of time in your career, and right. to because I don't want to, lose track of what we've advertised this as, and also again for my selfishness, I want to learn about the DSR4. So you've been an early beta tester. I think I'm allowed to say that of the DSR4.
Yes. Yep.
It's too late now, but and. Tell me about your initial impressions of the DSR4. I guess let's start with what is the DSR4?
Yeah, so the DSR4 is a quad channel super slot or slot receiver in a similar form factor to previous generation Lectrosonics slot receivers like the SRC and the SRB. Same form factor. The top of it is a little bit bigger because you got a higher quality screen in there. The screen is color. We can get into those details and stuff, of course, too. But basically, yeah, we're looking at a quad slot receiver that Lectrosonics worked really hard. It's a whole new front end. From my understanding, they brought in I don't want to say a whole different team, but they did bring in someone fresh in the RF engineering side of things to kind of create a new front end for this, but also to make it, their big thing was, we want to make this backwards compatible as far as we possibly can. So, this will work with the current generation electro digital stuff, but it'll also work with your digital hybrid stuff as well, which is amazing to me because a lot of us users have a lot of that equipment around. So to be able to say, when I buy a 4-channel slot receiver, I'm doubling the number of channels that I have in that slot. Therefore, now I can start grabbing at my older stuff. So if I've been using this digital stuff, it's like, okay, well, I can grab my hybrid stuff and also receive that into this. It kind of makes the entry into purchasing these a little easier.
Interesting. And how have you been using it? Have you been using it like with a mix of analog and digital transmitters, or have you gotten all new digital transmitters?
Yes. I currently own all hybrid wireless stuff. I'm in the process of transitioning over to digital electro. But currently, how I'm going about it is, depending on the show, I will rent or acquire other wireless. So with this show in particular that I'm currently on, some days we go beyond what I currently own, which is 8 channels of hybrid. So we go beyond that and we end up renting for a day here, a day there, however many more we need. And what I've been doing is I've been renting so that I can kind of learn and see how it sounds and get used to it. I've been renting the DBSMDs, so the double battery digital units. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think at this point, let's we haven't rehearsed this too much, but if you can show us your rig. You've brought it with you.
Yeah.
You're currently on a job, and we'll get into that in a second. But you brought it home, and there it is.
Yes. Here we are.
And so, give us a little tour. While you do that, I'm going to try and zoom into it if I can.
Yeah. So for this show, because it's I will say I'm currently on an HGTV home renovation show, and we're filming across the course of a 16-week run. So I've put together a bag here that kind of suits this production, because we go from kind of very stationary, rolling for sometimes 3 hours or so straight, just kind of stationary, where I don't need to be moving around. I could literally be at a cart or something like that, but I just kind of have my bag and we roll. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I've got I basically wear my harness all day, because I never know when I'm going to need to throw my bag on, grab my boom, and we're going to run and follow, or do something like that. So I had to throw together a rig that can do up to 8 channels of wireless. Plus I'm a wired boom guy, so plus wired boom. And so you can see I'm running on the Sound Devices 888, which has been a brilliant recorder mixer. Um, yeah, so I'm running digital. Of course, these are slotted in. The DSR4s are slotted in, so I'm running digital AES out, which goes into the 888 there. So that's all digital on the internal connection there. And of course, they're slotted into the SL2. So the SL2 provides us our antenna distribution. And then for antennas, what I'm using here is the Betzo bow ties. I kind of go back and forth between the Electro SNA 600s and the Betzo bow ties just for fun. But for me, they've kind of been performing equally. So I just kind of been sticking with these because of the adjustability. So I can kind of place these where I need them. And from there, it kind of opens up and I have a little more access to things. But that's kind of the rig. With the SL2, of course, I've got full control via the display on the and controls on the 888. I've got full control of the DSR4s, which of course we have now when I was beta testing. And if I'm not mistaken, even after release of the DSR4, we still didn't at that point have the capability to control the DSR4 from the 888. So that's something that was added recently with a firmware update to the not only to the 888 firmware, the 8 series firmware, but also the firmware on the DSR4s, so that we can actually get in there and control the DSR4 from the 888 menu. Yeah.
And so
big rundown, pretty much. Yeah.
Jeff, that control now works though. That you have full control through SuperSlot.
Yes. Yep.
Awesome.
Yep. Yeah. And just using the SuperSlot hotkey there, you see that drops me into the SuperSlot SL2 overview. You can now see my 8 channels of receive. And I currently have my real-time RF overview set to 30 seconds. So you're going to get a 30-second timeline of what your RF. Of course, I'm not in the best location right now. I have not scanned for this location. I want to preface this with that. This is not a filming location.
You're coming to us from Minneapolis, and you're shooting in North Dakota, right?
I'm South Dakota. Yep.
South Dakota.
It's South Dakota. Yep. So rest assured, these frequencies are whisper quiet in where we're filming in South Dakota, but here in Minneapolis, it is not the case. But I'm leaving them because I'm not filming here, so I'm just going to go back and they'll be clean. But yeah, the overview there. Of course, same thing as you had on the SRCs. Now I can go into a specific receiver. I can go in and adjust anything I want with that specific receiver channel. I can back out. I can hit options for the in the SL2 menu, main SL2 SuperSlot menu there. And I can do everything I could with the SRC as well.
I'm going to see how close I can get to the screen. Yeah. It's a very crude interface, as people might know. Okay, so I think I'm at my maximum zoom there. Okay. But anyways, yeah, okay. So that's...
Yeah. There are a few additions, of course, because the DSR4 is a newer receiver. So there's a function here and there that the previous generation, SRC did not have, that now you see in the SL2 menu, SuperSlot menu, because it now exists. But other than that, it's going to be identical. Like, use wireless names. I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, everyone out there. But I feel like use wireless names is something that is newer to the DSR4. There's a few things in there as well. But
what is that? What does that mean? Use wireless names.
My understanding is that if you have a transmitter that is named in I want to say Wireless Designer. I don't know if this function actually works with the Lectrosonics stuff. We'd have to pick Carl's brain or something like that on this. But there are manufacturers of transmitter and receiver that I can name the transmitter, and that name will not only follow through the transmitter, through the receiver, and actually land and be named accordingly on your your channel end in the recorder.
For the track metadata.
For the track metadata,
That's
correct.
very, very cool. Yeah, okay.
But I know, of course, that the Lectrosonics transmitters, you can't really name them in the transmitter per se. It's you're looking to, if I'm not mistaken, if we're looking at Wireless Designer or something along those lines, when that gets integrated with the DSR4, we might be able to have some communication between the name of the channel on the receiver to the name of the track metadata. That's how I understand it currently.
Copy that. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. While we're still in this view,
Yeah.
I want to ask, and I understand if you're reluctant to destroy all your coordination, but how easy is it to do a coordination? So say, the producers suddenly decided to do a shoot where you are. How simple is it to re-coordinate everything?
To re-coordinate everything, we are sitting at where we've kind of always been with electro stuff,
Mm-hmm.
which is like with the SRC. So I'm going to need to go in either via the menu system, which, by the way, is, in my opinion, light years better than the previous generation SRC. So I've been using the menu on here more.
Mm-hmm.
So either Smart Tune via, so in the menu here, you go RF setup, you have Smart Tune frequency scan. You can do all that same stuff in there, or I can go via the SL2 menu here, and I can actually do an RF scan right there, and it's going to do a scan across the spectrum.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And once that comes back, which, by the way, this is a lot faster than the SRC.
I'm noticing that. Yeah, it's speedy, and it's
it was way faster. So that's something that I have had to shift in the moment, and I know we don't have like connectivity like some manufacturers with the transmitter, where like via the recorder or via the receiver, I can actually do a scan and then change frequencies, and it'll automatically go out and change frequencies on the transmitters themselves. We're not there with that with this, but I will say that, based upon what my experience with Lectrosonics has been, it has gotten a little faster because the scan is faster.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're talking like when that happens, I mean, it's like it's in the heat of the moment. So any second you can gain with making a change on the fly like that is gold for us. So basically, having that scan come in that fast, I can basically zoom in and fly over to a frequency, like it looks pretty clean there.
Mm-hmm.
And I can pop in and I can say, which one do I want that to be on? It can be on this one. Okay. And now I've assigned that frequency to A1. Now, or I should say A1 meaning receiver slot A channel, receiver channel 1, right? I assigned that frequency to that specific channel. And then from there, with Lectrosonics, now I can use the Dweedle tones, or I can actually grab the transmitter and make the change on the transmitter there.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. That's the scan is really fast, and that graphical information is really beautiful on that display. And
yeah, that's the thing with me is I've personally never worked in a scenario where I've had talent that's been really, really not cool with me making adjustments to a transmitter that they're wearing or something along those lines.
Yeah.
So that's never been a big concern of mine, to have to go over to talent and actually make an adjustment on the transmitter. Of course, there are scenarios where that is not possible. Many scenarios where that's not possible. But just from the type of content that I work on, whether it be in the film world or the television, world, I've not really run into a scenario where it's like not being able to go and remotely push transmitter frequency changes
right
has been a killer for me. Yeah.
Okay, I would say we can always switch back to this angle unless there's anything else you want to
Yeah.
show us. But
No, other than, if anyone's interested in the bag, I just classic standard, just have the headphones on the
yeah.
side kind of a thing. I'm running, the smart battery
Mm-hmm.
in the bottom here, and
Mm.
that's just feeding into the power input
What kind of time?
PA4.
What kind of time do you get on that?
So currently we've already been on for a while, but I'm getting about 4 hours with both DSR4s on,
Mm-hmm.
meaning the front ends are fully on. They're receiving and they're using their full energy or electricity current with or draw with them being on. So of course we turn channels on. I've got 4 channels on. The second you start turning channels and preamps on, that will drop it down as well. But on average with, let's see, like let's just go average here, like 6 channels on, both receivers on. I also have a SMV transmitter on the side of my bag for my IFB feed.
Nice.
With all of that on, I can get about 4 hours out of a 98 watt hour inspired energy.
Wow.
So
Yeah. So I mean, I imagine you carry 4 batteries, 5 maybe for a spare, and
yep,
that's good for a
yep.
day. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and if I'm powering down, I go in here, and that's one of the beauties of this is, I go into the slot here, and this fast I can power down a receiver.
Huh.
So those situations where, and that already just brought my, let's do it, that just right there.
Mm-hmm.
I was at 3 hours and 22 minutes remaining, but powering off that second DSR4, because let's pretend I only needed 4 channels to receive. That brought me up to 4 hours and 16 minutes of remaining time. And the telemetry on this is very accurate down to the minute.
Huh.
Um,
Wow. That's great.
so it's very accurate.
Because you're
And
using
then,
the smart battery, the SM bus communications.
yep,
Yeah, that's
yep.
great.
And
Wow.
and that one, of course, you go in, oops, not that. Go into power and smart battery data, and in that menu I'm seeing time remaining, percentage remaining, the cycle count on that specific battery, and the temperature in Celsius, the internal temperature in Celsius on that battery. So you do get all that same stuff that you would get on, like, say, an audio route power distribution, right there on the recorder. So that lightens my bag. That's kind of what I'm looking for. I don't have to have a separate power distribution unit.
Amen to that. We have I am not a
Yeah.
cat is a YouTube user asking what's the recorder you're using. It looks like an 888. Is that right?
Yes, yes. Sound device is 888. And this is the I actually had a Scorpio for a while. And I ended up actually downsizing, if you will, if you could consider it that, down to the 888, mainly because I do have scenarios. I do a little broadcast work here and there, broadcast audio work, and I have had scenarios, even shows I've been on. I was on a cooking show a while back where I ended up using Dante. They wanted to do live hits from to the Food Network app, and there was a broadcast truck that pulled up on our location.
Uh huh.
And I was like, oh, how can I do this? How can I do this? And I remembered, ding, 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 I had Dante on this thing. So all I did is went out to the truck and I said, hey, you guys have a Dante interface or something? And they're like, oh yeah, for sure. We'll drop you a Cat 5. And there you go. I'm feeding all of my audio. And it was in that situation, it was going to New York to a live studio where they were mixing the audio and camera live in New York. So it was crazy. All satellite to New York, and digital straight. And they liked it because Dante, of course, you have everything that comes with Dante, control wise and naming wise and stuff for the channels and stuff. So
Wow.
yeah.
That's
So that
super
to get back to
flexible.
like that,
Yeah.
that's why I did the 888, right? Because it was like I could go down to the 833, but it was like I know I've got those scenarios once in a blue moon where I've got a need for Dante, and it's there when I need it.
Absolutely. Let's switch back to your face, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I may, in real time, try and code a way to get your Zoom client to switch remotely, but I'll only do that in the end because otherwise I'll be super distracted.
All right.
Yeah, keep those questions coming. We love that. I really like the flexibility of a recorder that has AES in and Dante in. I think especially if you need to scale up and scale back down, it's we were talking before we went on air, like, look, I do day work here and there. But like the last machine that I personally owned, before Gotham was, a PD6.
All right.
And so, yeah, I mean, just to think about like, to think about how far recorders have come, it's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And wireless, which is actually why we're here, and wireless.
Yeah.
So, 8 channels, no weighting, super lightweight, super flexible with RF. What is, how wide is the RF bandwidth on the DSR4 that you have?
The DSR4 it covers, I believe, 470 to 614. I always get that messed up on the top end. 614, and there's a little bit that's cut out there for, was it cellular?
Well, there's the astronomy channel, and
astronomy. That's what it is.
Yeah, but yeah, no.
I have trouble remembering all that.
It's basically the core legal frequencies.
Core legal frequencies in North America are available on the DSR4. Hey, that's another good point. Is that I've got these block A1 SMD WBs.
Mm-hmm.
But it's nice to know that that's another reason I ended up purchasing these after beta testing, because it's like now that I know that I'm going to be getting into the digital stuff, it's good to know that like I'm adding much more bandwidth there, because the DBD SMD WBs, the digital transmitters, cover all the way up. It's not just 470 to 537 and a half or whatever it is. It's all the way up to 614 or 608. So it's covering, I'm able to actually add spectrum there that I didn't have before with my previous generation. Or if I wanted to buy a used B1.
Right. If you were traveling and you needed some other spectrum suddenly, or do you practice like band planning? Like if your talent is in kind of that A1 block, are your sends in a different block?
Yes, I do on my here, let me clip this back on here. On my IFB transmission, I am in the block 940. 940, I think the transmitter goes 941 to 9. You'd have to help me here. 950.
960. I thought, but yeah, it was somewhere in that. Yeah. And it varies amongst manufacturers, but that's also great. So the stuff you're transmitting is well away. From
absolutely, that's a big factor for me. Absolutely, and it's a game changer. There are situations where, and by design, I actually use the same. And I know there's scenarios where I don't do that. I have some Sony URX transmitter receive that I use for camera hops when I do need a separate feed. But from most of the stuff that I work on, when I am running a bag setup like this, I send the same. My IFB feed goes to cameras and for IFB feed as well. So, if it's not more complicated, why make it more complicated, kind of a thing.
Yep.
And then I don't have more RF bursting out of my bag.
Yeah, no, that's always the thing. Yeah. It's important. I am not a cat. I see your question, and I'm going to get to it after we talk about the DSR4 some more. I want to get to everybody's questions. So ask them. All right, so you've been using the DSR4 for a while. You obviously are happy with them. Tell me about the performance. Tell me about some of the triumphs. Look, You know, I think my goal is to kind of have an honest conversation with you. So, you know,
Yeah.
let's talk about the
Yeah.
good. Let's talk about what could be better. What have you noticed, you know, these months in the
Yeah.
field?
Yeah. And it just being completely honest, there's been a lot of good and not much bad.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of that's why I bought it. And one of the things that my baseline was this, you know, if these perform, because I am invested as a sound mixer, as a business person, I'm invested in the electro environment, and currently I was not interested in completely switching environments, so, or ecosystems. So what it was for me is like, as long as the as long as the DSR4 performs as good or better than my previous SRCs and SRBs, I am going to be a happy camper, because I know how those work. I know the ins and outs of what to expect from those. And I can say with confidence that my DSR4s have performed better than my SRCs and my SRBs. Not only from, you know, it could be placebo effect, but because, you know, hey, I bought this and I spent a lot of money on it, so of course it sounds better.
Confirmation bias is the fancy term. Right.
Thank
I
you.
mean, look, it's better than the opposite, which is buyer's remorse. So, you know.
Yeah, I do not have, and being completely honest, I do not have buyer's remorse from this.
Yeah.
They have worked their way into my operating, you know, ecosystem. And the one of the things is, you know, I'm busy enough where I don't want to have to bring something into my ecosystem, my system, and have to go through all these like growing pains and learning, and as fun as that is when we're off of work, you know, I needed to be able to put these in. That's another reason I chose them. Slot them in and go. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like okay, now we're dealing with a whole new system. Um, but the performance has been not only as good, like I said, as the SRC SRB, but a little bit better. And to my ears, I don't know what's going on, and that's above me. But they sound a bit better to me, even with my hybrid wireless. And I don't know why that is. If there's a different algorithm going on, which I imagine there might be, a new front end.
Well, and think about
Um,
the new chipsets that have come out, and the new, yeah.
right,
I mean,
right.
so it's not surprising to me that you can hear a difference.
It sounds a bit better, a little cleaner. I don't hear the algorithm as much. I don't hear any like hashiness on the higher frequencies or anything like that. Um, and then of course digital is digital. When I bring in the DBs, you know, the digital stuff, it's clean because it's digital. um, but Lectro's you know, the servo bias input, the preamp that they've got on there for the lavs is, I've always dug the sound of them, you know. So it's one of those things where when I hear electro on TV or in a film or something like that, I'm like, oh yeah, I know what that is.
Yeah, yeah, it's
But they sound
wild, isn't
good,
it?
you know what I
Yeah,
mean? I like it. I like it.
I
And
have.
that comes from my, I guess, my music background of like choosing. We were talking about that before we went live, like, you know, when you're working in the music studio, you have all the time in the world to choose, hey, which mic do I want to use on the lead vocal, and I can play around with preamps and all that stuff.
No, and I think also coming from a music background, I imagine sometimes what is the cleanest sound is not necessarily the best sound for what you're going for.
Oh, absolutely,
Um,
absolutely.
I want to hear your opinion about that, but I also I am so grateful for I am not a cat. I wish I knew what you were and what you instead of what you weren't, but that's okay. I live in Nevada. I would be filming in desert heat. So do the DSR4s put off a lot of heat? Following up any
Good
functioning,
question.
yeah, following up any functioning issues in various extreme weather conditions. How is the heat these days in South Dakota?
Yeah, yeah, you can tell just on my response to that question that I've been dealing with it. I think we've all been dealing with it around the country with, you know, extreme heat that's just been going on, you know. So in South Dakota, where I've been at on location, we've been dealing with extreme heat, extreme humidity. to the point where, and I'm not kidding, I look at the temperature and I look at the humidity, the dew points, and this is what I could be in the jungle right now. You know what I mean? And I'd be operating this minus the actual downpour,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
and actual condensation. I could be in those environments. It's basically I'm operating in the same thing. And um, here's the thing that I think we kind of have to be real about is that they all get hot. You know, whether you're dealing with, you know, any other quad channel slot receiver, uh, or even if somewhere down the road they get into higher channel counts in even 6 channels in a slot receiver, you know, we're packing a lot of circuitry, and some of that circuitry generates heat into this small little slot form factor, right? So yes, it produces heat, but where I'm at with it is that they're supposed to. So when you look at an 888, when you look at a DSR4, there's a reason they make the housings out of aluminum or aluminium.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I've been having fun with that. We have a British person I'm working with lately. They're designed to transfer that heat and dissipate it away. So when you go down and you touch like right now, I'm touching the top of my DSR4 and it is hot. There's no doubt about it. I've had it to the point where like it, you know, I can't hold my hands on it.
Hmm.
And that's the same with the top of an 8 series. Anyone who's used their 8 series in a warmer environment knows that there are times when you're outdoors all day in 90-degree heat in the sun where you reach down to touch the top, you know, even sometimes the knobs on your 888 and it's hot. But the thing is they're designed by nature to dissipate that heat as a cooling system, you know. But yes, so that's just kind of my spiel on I hear a lot about like receivers getting hot, and it's like they're supposed to a certain extent because that aluminum transfers the heat away from the circuitry inside.
And I think the question then is, has the heat ever affected performance, even to the point where it's either flaky or just shuts off?
No. I've been, like as an example, the last 2 weeks of filming, I've been in temperatures anywhere between 85 and 99. I think we've even gotten over 100 on location recently, and that's with humidity. And on those days where we're pushing mid to upper 90s, yeah, I reach down and the recorder, the receivers, you know, everything is like really hot to the touch. But we're rolling, and I roll all day, and it sounds just as good as it did before. So, you know, that was a long-winded answer to your question. But you know, the thing is at the end of the day, yes, is it working? Is it breaking? It isn't breaking, and it's working.
Yeah.
So
that's
yeah,
all that matters. Yeah. That's
Yep.
that is very, very good to know. I guess, you know, besides, well, there's heat, there's range. You're happy with. I am not a cat is pleased with your answer, and especially with.
Thank you.
Excellent. Love that long-winded answer, sir. Is what they said.
I feel like we kind of all are like that. We like to know as much as we possibly can about a topic.
Well, and what other opportunity is there to talk about it in this depth?
Yeah.
You know, and it's, look, I mean, this is why I'm so happy that you agreed to come on, and you know, coming from a salesperson, you know, like I can say, sure, it gets hot, but it's fine. But coming from someone that uses it in the field, there's nothing more important.
I can tell you, like I said, I've used it in. I hope I don't have to, you know, work in that kind of heat again, because it is true. There's a desert heat, there's a dry heat, and then there's a, you know, an 80% humidity or 90% humidity heat, and the humidity can get in there and affect things too. And so I've been in humid and hot kind of environments, and I've not had an issue with the Sound Devices recorder. I've not had an issue with the receivers. I have had some sweat stuff with talent, but you know, we all deal with that. You know, how can we protect our our transmitters from the sweat ingress and stuff like that. But
Yep.
that's just kind of par for the course on a warm location.
No, look, my experience with temperature extremes is the thing that gives me nightmares is condensation. Like when you have to go from out to in, or like loading in, and those are the things those are the moments that really like make me tighten up. When I first started, I used to get really nervous about the Northeast cold, especially like your stuff comes off of a truck. Like over a weekend, it's been sitting on a lot. And like, and you're no stranger to that in Minneapolis. But I find like it warms up. Like you said, these electronics are designed to heat up, and so give them a minute, and they'll warm up, and the cables will start to loosen up. And,
as long as I don't see, and being from the north as well, as long as I don't see like water dripping into a crack on my gear, I'm cool.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
If I see water ingressing physically with my own eyes, then I'm like, okay, we're not cool. We're gonna hold off for a minute until this evaporates off. But there's times when you've got to. I have a sound mixer friend of mine that I worked on another show recently where we had multiple sound mixers, and he's done a lot of work in jungle environments and stuff like that, and told me a story about where they went into a specific location and ended up sending runners to buy bags of rice. And they literally put bags of rice and dumped them into open Pelican cases. And the only way they were able to operate their transmitters was to overnight stick their transmitters in the rice overnight so that they could get out in the morning. And then someone had to like brush them off and, get the rice dust off of them and stuff like that. But thankfully we're past that, and hopefully.
I think one of the things that this format allows us is to digress a little bit. So I'm gonna.
I'm very
no.
Of that.
I'm keeping an eye on the time. I want to kind of keep us for another 15, 20 minutes or so, max.
Great.
But I want to shout out to Louis Rossman's YouTube channel. He is a computer repair person. He's down in Austin now. He was local to us in New York. But he's done look, rice can only go so far, and he'll open up a MacBook and he'll show you the circuitry, and like once it gets wet. I love Louis. Good. It's really scary, some of the rust that can get in there just from a little bit of moisture. I will say, right to repair. Exactly. I will say that I have not been a stranger to reaching for or asking wardrobe or hair and makeup for a hair dryer to get some stuff going. On a cold day, there was like anyways, I don't want to get into ancient history, but there was a daylight sensor that kind of like a light sensor that kind of needed to get up to temperature quick. But anyways, it's stuff has come a long way. So I'm really glad to hear
and that's what's great about
the heat.
The job we do and stuff. I would wager that most of us that are watching this there's a reason we do what we do. If it all worked flawlessly 100% of the time, we're not troubleshooting, we're not engineering. One of my mentors years ago said there's a reason we're called audio engineers. And you need to be able to troubleshoot. You need to be able to troubleshoot on the fly, come up with solutions for problems, and that's always stuck with me. So going to wardrobe and saying, hey, I need a hair dryer, can you help me?
Oh man. No, I mean having to explain to a producer why with it, and just pretend like that's the most normal thing in the world. Like, I left it's with my other kit.
We need 10 30-pound bags of rice. Go. Why? Don't ask. Just
that's right. Mickey says, "Remember, you can never have enough flux." That's a Louis Rossman quote. And Igor says, "I own one DSR4 833 plus SL2 combo, and I'm still struggling to get it to work as it should. From time to time, one of the receivers gets some garbling audio artifacts in DB2 mode with DBSMBs and only in D2. I'm not sure if the comment is cut off or anyways. But,
Mm.
you know, Igor, right out the gate, I'm gonna say the most generic thing before Jeff. I'm gonna turn it over to you if you have any ideas. Which is, there's been a whole bunch of firmware updates, and both on the 8 series side, and on the DSR4 side and the transmitter side. So that's the first thing I would say. And Igor has a follow-up question to you, Jeff, which I'll then hand it off to you, which is, do you get any audio artifacts on your DSR4?
Well, I've been lucky enough in the times where I need to, since I've had these, the times that I've needed digital to rent units. And when I do that, I've been purposely going for digital units so I can experiment with them. I don't know why my brain gravitates towards it, but is it a range thing? Like, I would like to know, Igor, how far away your talent was from you in those scenarios. What other extraneous sources of potential RF energy emission are nearby? Could that be? Could there be an artifact on the receiving end being generated based upon like interference or something like that? That's where my brain goes. But like as far as my experience has been, sorry, I keep touching my mic there. Has been my talent in those scenarios where I've needed to add more transmitters has been really close. I've lucked out in that regard, and it's just been coordinate. I do use shout out to TX Advance.
Mm-hmm.
I do use TX Advance quite extensively, and I have, though I like the scanning and assigning frequency assigning on the 8 series and the DSR4. What they have going with TX Advance is pretty magical, and that's really what I do when I roll up to a location. Is I just hit that scan button and I scan across my spectrum. For me, it's 470 all the way up to 960 ish, and I'll go scan that and then auto assign. And magic assign or whatever that button is in there. I'd have to look at the name of it, but it comes up with coordinates my frequencies for me, and then I just go from there and assign those. And the reason I like that is because I'm going somewhere with this, I promise. The reason I like that is because I can do all that while I'm rolling. You know what I mean? I don't need to. I can do a scan and a reassign. I shouldn't say reassign because I'm not actually assigning anything to the transmitters or receivers, but you know what I mean.
You're scanning in TX Advance, yeah.
Correct, and coordinating in TX Advance. So what I'm getting at is like in those scenarios, even when I add more transmitters and stuff on the fly, and they've been the digital units, I've been lucky to not have issues, and I don't know if that's attributed to like I'm using TX Advance and I scan and auto coordinate, and then I apply those frequencies, accordingly, and it just works. But I have not had any garbling or artifacty stuff. So I'd just be curious. It was Igor, right? I'd be curious about some other factors in that working environment, working scenario that you think may have potentially helped cause that issue.
Yeah, and so he goes on. And by the way, I just put in the chat a link to TX Advance for people that don't know it. It's a great hardware software combo.
Yeah.
All right. So he says, no, it happens in most unexpected cases, like 4 TXs in one room with simple talk show scenario with clean and coordinated RF, all of them on 10 milliwatts. That was going to be my aha, was like sometimes with digital, too much power can cause an overload. But no, it sounds
Absolutely.
Igor, I feel your pain. I wish I could help. It sounds like you're doing all the right things. One question I would ask, and I always hesitate because I'm not sure how people are going to take these kinds of questions, but like, could it be digital RF getting into the lav? Like sometimes not all lavs can handle digital modulation, and so
Ooh,
we've certainly had our share
yeah,
at Gotham of troubleshooting that kind of thing.
yeah.
But if it's like a COS 11D or any of the DPAs, or there's a whole bunch of lavs that are perfectly compatible with digital modulations, then that's
Mhm.
not going to be it. But he's
Well,
going
and
to.
that RF power you mentioned, that sounds like a good starting point. Drop your RF power down. Um, if you can do a test, one of the things that I might do as well is if you can do a test where you take the same frequencies, obviously don't have this on talent, but get some friends to help or some crew members to help if we're on a break, and get them as close as they are when you're filming, and then have them start separating out, walking away from each other or moving away from each other just a little bit and get some separation on them,
Mm.
and see if that problem appears and goes away with some separation between transmitters. That's something that I've had in the past as well. When I get, on cooking shows, especially, we get into these scenarios where we've got 8, 10, 12 people around a table in one small room, and you're pushing all of those different frequencies of RF energy into a small space like that.
Well, and the thing that
you
freaks
know
me out about cooking shows too is the stainless steel reflecting everything.
yeah,
So you get
yeah,
all that multipath and stuff. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Well, okay. So Igor's going to continue to work with Lectro
I'd love to know
support.
what he finds out.
Yeah. And he thanks you for that suggestion. Joe says it's a D2 moto issue for him, and he feels like it's gotten slightly better over newer firmware. It doesn't handle audio repack well when signal gets frail. Sure, that sounds like a codec kind of
Mm-hmm.
issue.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And
and
guys, I'm learning about the digital side of things too. Like I've been working in the hybrid realm for ever now, and I'm just beginning to starting to rent these digital transmitters and learning about them as well. So
yeah,
yeah,
Joe says there may be a hardware update for your DBSM. There was for mine. I think he's talking directly to Igor at that point. But yeah, that's interesting. Um, yeah, I mean, look, I don't envy the manufacturers. I mean, I think
yeah,
yeah, it is. This has been a very, very tough couple of years. Just like
oh,
under normal conditions, it's tough, but between the supply chain issues and all the rest of it,
mm-hmm.
that leads me to one thing that I wish the DSR4 has soon, and I hear from Carl it is soon, is wireless designer support.
Oh yes,
For
yeah,
me, like I can imagine a rack of these. I mean, forget about me. Our
mm,
customers are desiring this, but I can imagine
mm-hmm.
a rack of these. So you can have 16 channels in a one RU. AES to Dante converter. I would
Yep.
do like USB, USB to Ethernet converter. Which
Mm-hmm.
works perfectly fine. I mean, it's what the Stream Deck is running. Our computer is over there, but it's
Yeah,
USB over
yeah,
Cat5. Um, and yeah, and now you have this awesome, remote pod that's
yeah,
tiny. So, and that's not to mention
yeah,
people using it on a cart and all the rest of it. But yeah.
yeah. And if if we're talking about wishes, too, I wish that hopefully someday, there's USB um right on the front of these, and if you have the right base plate or back plate with it, I think it's the DSR4 EXT USB
Mm-hmm.
back plate, if
Yep.
that's the right. um wouldn't it be cool to be able to run in a bag? Obviously they're slotted in, so I don't know how that would work, but it would just be cool to be able to run maybe a iPad or iPhone wireless designer-ish app,
Mm-hmm.
and be able to go lightning to USB and be able to configure things, maybe do a scan and auto assign, with something like that. There's that's one of the things that's cool too, is Lectro's got a lot of manufacturers are doing what they're doing right now, and they've done a lot. That's, we can't deny that. But so one of the advantages Lectro has right now, or I think that is kind of cool, is they have a lot of leeway to like go wherever they want with it. They've got a lot of stuff that they could do now. And it'll be interesting to see where they go with this,
Yes, absolutely. I think, and Carl said this on our stream a couple of weeks ago. It's limited by the person power, who they can assign in terms of programming and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but
I
I would love to see an app. I mean, and the app could even incorporate the Dweedle tones, and it could be like all encompassing. But
yeah.
I'm just making sure that I only see YouTube comments. So I'm just making sure that I'm not missing any Facebook comments. And just right on cue. Nate is testing Facebook comments for me. Thank you. All right, so. Not a cat did ask a question about so Not a cat uses, I can't see it anymore, but I'm going to paraphrase, but basically they're using their audio recorder as a USB interface. Certainly you can use the 888 and the Scorpio into a computer and from a computer with Dante and Dante Virtual Sound Card. And I was just going to start to look in the manual, but do you know offhand the USB in the 8 series, does that also carry USB audio?
I would not know. I am not one that has used my 8 series as an audio interface yet. I am so sorry.
No. It's that was totally out of left field.
It's all good.
I'm going to see if I can just look at the manual real quick.
Yeah, I bet you there's definitely I've came across on social a lot of different people who have. So that answer, of course, is out there.
Yeah.
I just have not had a need to use my 8 series as an interface. I usually I've got some old school.
No.
Scarlett audio interface.
So this is good to know for those Zoom, like remote directors watching over Zoom. USB-C in the 888, 2 in, 2 out USB available. USB audio is available via the USB-C port. All routing is handled through the channel and output routing matrices. No special drivers are needed. So
matrices on the recorder or in the software?
On the recorder.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. No special drivers. Yeah, no, I think that's hugely flexible and it's funny because I personally, so it is, first of all, it is, according to the manual, limited to 2 in, 2 out. So I think if you want higher track counts, Dante Virtual Sound Card is the way to go. And second of all, I was just reminded of this book last week, a book called Normal Accidents, which is it's ostensibly about the chain of events that led to the 3 Mile Island catastrophe. Which included the NRC representatives leaving early on a Friday, so they didn't get the call until Monday. Anyways, all of that to say, speaking of digressions, that I would prefer a separate audio interface if it only bought me 2. Since I'm only getting 2 in, 2 out anyways, I prefer to have an outboard audio interface. But it's nice to know, it's there if I needed it.
Yeah, that's kind of why I kind of gravitate towards my Focusrite Scarlett interface, or I've used a lot of my music background, right? I've used a lot of the Motu stuff, and if I needed a dedicated audio interface, I kind of tend to reach for those. Yeah. Hey,
so any other DSR4 questions or any questions two audio geeks talking. We're
Yeah.
happy to answer any questions. One funny thing I wanted to talk to you about, I went the reverse in terms of like location sound to recording music. And Jeff, you and I worked on,
Oh,
the Ike Riley doc together.
right.
Great Midwest musician from Chicago.
Awesome.
So check him out. But, like a lot of the stuff I recorded of his, I'd make mixes myself. And
Yeah.
he would say, it's too clean. And it's funny because that is literally what I would do is like as a location sound recordist for dialogue, I'm like, oh, my job is to get it clean.
Yeah.
And so I would turn in these like very clean mixes with, be so proud, no distortion. And he would then take it and remix it and add all this distortion and stuff. And absolutely, it sounded more musical. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, we were chatting about this a little bit before going live too. It's like, where did I start? It was, I started in the music side of things, and that was the big thing in the music realm was, what devices or rack mount units will plug in a lot of plugins now, but even to this day, we still got a lot of hardware units. What can we use to dirty this up, or what can we use to add some harmonic distortion to this? As it's all brush strokes, it's all what can we throw on the canvas to make the picture look like what the artist or producer wants, and that was the hard thing for me, is going into location sound was just straight up like, nope, I just need to get this as clean as I possibly can.
Agreed. I would, it's interesting as I've gotten a little bit older, more experienced or whatever, I feel like there's a surprising amount of leeway that we can have in narrative stuff, where you can start to make equipment choices based on story or based on how a character is feeling at that point, and you can exercise some leeway. My favorite story of that, and I'm not going to advocate this, but Dennis Maitland, we asked him, so this is Todd's father, and we asked him what his favorite, like what film he was most proud of. He had done a whole bunch of films. He had done the New York, oh my God, I can't, Die Hard New York. He had done Multiplicity. I assumed he was going to pick one of those. He picked Lenny. And it was because he felt like he added to the story. And so the story he told about how he did that was, as Lenny Bruce, which is what the film Lenny is about, started to get into bigger and bigger clubs, and then start to, his descent. Dennis would use better and better microphones. And then in that kind of like really, really just intense scene that's like 10 minutes, it's like a 10-minute take of Lenny Bruce just falling apart on stage. Dennis says he unscrewed the mic grill and like added some rattle in there and just put it back.
Really?
No, I'm sorry, he took out the pop screen. I don't want to screw the story up. He took out the pop screen.
Okay.
And then screwed it back and then gave it to Dustin Hoffman, or gave it to the prop department. And so you watch the scene and there's all this like crazy handling noise of him just like falling apart, emotionally falling apart, with the microphone is literally falling apart.
Oh, that's genius.
I mean,
I love it.
I think if like, I just imagine submitting that to like Netflix, some sort of like editing room that's not expecting that. I think you'd get chewed out, but it's an amazing idea. All right. So thankfully, Joe is bringing us back to the topic at hand.
All right.
Have you experienced DSR4 only showing one or two green RF signal history in vector pair, both tuned to same frequency, but occasionally DSR4 won't lock green on both sides of the pair? Sometimes vice versa in SLR2. Weird one, latest firmware on DSR4 and 833. So
I'm curious what he means by lock green.
Yeah. It'll be like 30 seconds before he hears your request for more info, but yeah, hopefully he'll get it to us.
I have played a lot around with vector pairs a lot. And I said that twice, a lot. Uh, what I think what he means by locked green is the RF, real-time RF graph. And my
Yes,
question
and
would be,
he clarifies
the
the signal history that shows signal strength.
yeah, you will not, how I understand vector pairs working is you will not get the same type of RF receive on both front ends, because of the orientation of the antennas and how the antenna is and how the system is combining the signals from the two front ends into that which you're seeing on the graph. Now, of course, I would refer to, Carl or someone at Lectrosonics or the manual, which I don't have in front of me about this. But it is normal. Let me phrase it that way. My understanding, it is normal to see a variance or difference in what you see on the RF graph on either of the RF graphs when you're in vector. Now, where I would be getting concerned is if I have really good, like I would say midway up the graph, green RF signal strength, and I'm hearing dropouts or artifacts or something like that, then I'd be like, okay, what's going on here? But that's my understanding, is that it's normal to see, you're not necessarily going to see full strength on both of your RF meters when you're running in a vector pair.
Copy that. Joe clarifies, most of the time both pairs are green. It's a bit alarming when one is red, like not signal graph.
Oh, he's saying it goes down to red on one side.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've not experienced that.
I would ask Joe if it's always the same side.
Oh yeah, good point.
I'm just looking to make sure he didn't say that in the question, in the comment before.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question.
This is something that can I interject? I just wanted to say one thing. I think it's very important with the DSR to understand that what we are seeing on the RF graph is not, I don't want to go that far, but like I was going to say remotely even the same as what we're used to seeing on the RF graph on an SRC or an SRB, for a number of reasons. The first one would be the number of pixels there are on the screen to represent the RF energy. It starts there. The other thing is what is the lower end of the graph? What level of RF energy is that versus what is the level that the high end of the graph is representing? You know what I mean? What is the gain between the bottom and the top of the graph? And I can tell you for sure that the amount of gain between or amplitude scale between the bottom of the graph and the top is much greater and much higher resolution than what you were seeing, say, on an SRC or an SRB. I based upon my tests and my experience, the RF energy that you're seeing. So like if you've got the same transmitter tuned to, say, to receive on an SRC and tuned to receive on a channel on your DSR4, you might see just a constant, and you're doing a walk test, you might just see a constant full RF energy on the SRC until that person doing the walk test gets to a certain distance away, and then it drops. And then it drops because of the resolution of that display.
Right.
Whereas you see your resolution on your graph on the DSR4, and you're going to see a lot more data. You're going to see a lot more gradual data on that graph. So I just like to throw that out there. That's something to think about when you're looking at the graph on the DSR4 and trying to potentially compare that to other gear you might have in your kit.
Totally. Joe says it's usually the B side. But then he says reboot usually brings back both green, maybe a firmware bug. I mean, when I saw the comment, usually the B side, my mind went to, swap the antennas, inspect the antenna,
sure.
Inspect the antenna, because sometimes those SMA pins are a little too recessed to make good contact. But if a reboot fixes it, then, it's probably something else. I have a question.
Yeah.
I mentioned part of this is strictly selfish reasons, so I can learn about the DSR4, which is, so in the Axient ecosystem, and other manufacturers do this as well, there's a quality meter in addition to the RF meter. And the idea behind the quality meter is it's telling you the quality of the decoded data, which is helpful. So if you're, if you see full RF and low quality, that means something's interfering with you. Conversely, like you can see very low RF, but if the quality is, halfway up the graph, like 3 or something,
right,
you're okay.
Right.
So is there the equivalent in the DSR series?
Yeah, I'm going to actually...
While you do that, I'm going to say...
Check that as we're here.
Yeah. I'm going to say that we are at the hour and 17 minutes, which flew by. And so if anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat, because we'll probably wrap it up pretty soon.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Let me switch over here to, let's just say D2 on a channel, and then look at that channel. That's not something that even has popped into my head to look for. It's an awesome question. And so I've always looked, even when I've got digital systems or a digital transmitter, I've always looked at the RF graph, right?
Yeah. And to be fair,
link.
Yeah. I was going to say, to be fair, maybe it's only valid if you're using the DB transmitter. You know what I mean? Like maybe because it needs to give a qualitative assessment of data.
Yeah, and my understanding is that with the RF graph or energy graph, amplitude graph, it's showing you RF amplitude, received RF energy or amplitude, regardless if your RF signal is analog or digital. So as far as the quality meter goes, I don't see one on the menu when I go there. I see your standard, link flashing. Now, Peter, you probably know more about this than I do, but like, is the link, is it one of those things where if the link is solid and you're linked, that's telling you your quality is?
My understanding is that's about pilot tone on the.
That's about.
Is it? Are you talking? Because you're talking about
analog.
For analog, yes.
Yes, for digital though, I am curious as to what the link pertains to. Is it? So as an example, some manufacturers have like for the Q or the quality, that's like a little meter.
And that's what I'd like to see is like a meter, because that's
my question is the link a full on off of that same kind of thing?
Yeah.
Like if it's linked, you have a full Q, and unlinked you have no Q, or is link like it's just not going to receive at all? You know what I mean? So I want to know more about that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good, that's a good question. I think it's got to be variable so you can really make an assessment about what's going on. I would like that too. Yeah, I mean that's the thing that is really helpful to know is if somebody's link is the D2 pilot tone, says Joe.
Oh, so it is a pilot.
Yeah, I mean, so that makes sense. The quality thing, maybe I'll formally suggest it to Electro.
Yeah.
But, it just is helpful on the digital wireless that I've used, just to sort of know, to get a variable sense of how well my data is doing. Yeah.
Like, am I receiving all the data that's being transmitted?
Yeah, and if I'm starting to not, why not? That, or at least that gets me to think about that. Definitely the most helpful feedback I can see is high RF and low data,
Mm-hmm.
because we've all been there where we've seen full RF and yet we're getting
Yep.
dropouts, and it's
Something's
like,
wrong.
yeah,
It's
what
not
is
working.
going on? So if I know that the
Yeah.
data's not, and it's all of this sort of checksum and redundant data calculations that it's telling you how
Yeah.
well it's doing.
Yeah. And
So
my brain always goes back to, and I like that the ability to have a quality meter or something similar on the electro digital side would be great. I always go back to just the science of 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 audio or RF energy in an environment and in a room. Whether we're talking digital or we're talking analog, that is those are actually, that's energy being pushed into an environment. And the idea that the concept that that nothing's going to affect that outside of my operating realm is unrealistic. And that's one of the things that I think is important to, what I mean, to
yeah,
understand with this stuff is like, I can be fully coordinated. I could scan with TX Advance. I could do everything in my power to try. And I think it's in our nature as audio engineers to be like, I am going to fix this and I'm going to find it, and fix it. That's the way it is. But there are scenarios where there's something that's some energy that's being pushed into that environment, or there's something in that environment that is impeding it, whether I like it or not, and I'm not going to be able to find it. So what do we do in those scenarios? And that's one of the things where you're talking about quality is like, the more we have to diagnose, those tools to diagnose that, the better off we are. So I think manufacturers putting those things in here, the more they do that stuff, the easier it's going to be on us to be able to do our job.
Yeah, and I think the less support issues they get too.
Yeah.
Look, how many? I mean, I've personally taken a whole bunch of RF issues, calls with RF issues that
Yeah.
came down to something like a badly made SDI cable that's by the camera. That's just radiating broadband RF energy. Yeah, and it's I mean, but it's nobody looks to the camera department that it's they're the cause of this.
Mm-hmm.
People just know that the sound department is having an issue. So it's totally
well, and
the more information.
Like some certain manufacturers have higher tolerances for their RF designs.
Yes.
Do we know, question mark, do we know that certain camera manufacturers for focus pulling equipment, for wireless video transmit and receive, what are the tolerances for the RF transmit and receive on that? Are they transmitting on the frequency that they say they're transmitting on, plus a bunch of other stuff? Or are they, do you know what I mean? What are the tolerances of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I've been a frequency coordinator on a set where, because I needed our stuff to work, I just by extension said, look, let me coordinate everybody's frequencies. And some of the biggest challenges I had were finding out, translating, like, what does this, I want to say Preston, but it may not have been Preston, but like, when they say channel 23, what frequency do they mean? And,
is it channel 23 in the 5 gigahertz range?
Or I mean, in that case, it was like, in the Zigbee, they say they're a Zigbee transmitter, but somehow their numbers and Zigbee channels didn't line up, and I mean, it's just stuff like that. I will say, being there, offering myself as a frequency coordinator, the crew was incredibly cooperative. People are happy to finally have somebody to kind of take on that responsibility.
And I'm running into that more and more. I have been lucky in especially the last year, but the last 2 years, camera departments that are like, let's work together, let's figure this out. What, is there something that I'm doing that's stepping on you? Is there something that you're doing that's stepping on me? Let's come up with a solution. A DP on the show that I'm on right now actually just ordered a brand new Teradek bolt. And I think as sound mixers, we're all kind of like we
Ugh.
geek out about the camera stuff a bit, you know. So,
Oh, but
and, and
I tighten up a little bit with the mention of the, I've had a couple of
yeah,
RF issues with the Teradek stuff in
yes,
particular.
I was going to throw this out there though, as kind of like mind blowing for me is that there is a full on this Teradek, there's a full frequency scanner and selection system on the latest generation of Teradeks. And that's always been in working with camera department has always been look, I know it's in 2.4 or 5, or this one's actually operating in 6G now to try and get more away from the noise. But my whole thing has been like, okay, we have the tools to scan and coordinate frequencies. Why doesn't the camera, they're working with all this wireless stuff too. Why can't we work all together as a team to make sure we're coordinated, and having the camera department being able to actually scan and assign frequencies and look at their own spectrum? I was like, yeah, it's about time.
Yeah, no,
So it's pretty cool.
That's right.
It's pretty cool.
Look, I think on that positive note, no. Look, on that positive note of working together to solve problems and
the world's problems.
Yes. Nate, our Nate says, how are you coming to us live from Minneapolis? We'll spend the last 2 minutes talking about it, and then I'll keep an eye out for any questions that might wrap us up. But, I'll just give the background, which is that when, we wanted to do a follow-up video to the original video that you and I did together, Jeff. And you mentioned you were on a job and you might not have access to a you might not have access to a webcam or something like that. I said, well, we've helped all these other companies build remote kits. We can build one ourselves. So we built one. It is a computer, and it is an OBSBot webcam that's not to add fuel to the AI fire, but it's like, Jeff, if you lean to your left or right, it's got a little AI algorithm that will definitely keep track of you. What's weird is if there were another person that were to come walk by the frame, it would ignore them. It knows your face. I don't want to freak you out, Jeff. But yes, and that's all feeding into a computer with an overhead shot of the bag that allows us to get a second angle out of you, and then we are VPNing back to New York and using something called Zoom ISO. If anybody's curious. This was a company called Liminal that started during the pandemic to kind of help performers use Zoom to do performances without an audience. Zoom liked them so much they ended up buying the company. And so that's how we get you in 1080p, and it allows us to get to have a little conversation. So that's...
I have to say it. I am super impressed with what you guys have put together.
Oh, and the DMX.
Kudos to you guys.
Thanks. The DMX controllable light, which we can remote control and dial in.
Hey Peter. Yeah. Hey Peter, can you go up 3% on the light here?
Why, sure we can.
Yeah.
Back it off. Yeah.
Back it off a little bit.
It's the.
I didn't touch anything.
No. We can warm it up for you. Oh my God, that might be a little too warm. So we'll go back to cooling it. Anyways,
it's blowing my mind. I love it. So
that's the nerd stuff. That's for a future video. Look, I want to HAL 9000. I took my younger son to see 2001 Space Odyssey in 70 millimeter. Everybody's asking me if I'm going to see Oppenheimer in 70 millimeter. And what I say to them is, I'm going to wait for it to come out on my phone. And then I'll watch it on my phone. I said that to a DP once and he got so upset. Anyways,
I imagine.
All right. On that note, thank you so much, Jeff, for taking part in this. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Thanks to everybody watching.
Thank you.
And Nate,
I just wanted to say one thing too.
Yeah, please.
I'm super stoked to be a part of this community, this sound community, and just production community in general. And everyone in my career has been so helpful, from Peter at Gotham, to everyone, all of our Sound Mixer friends out on social and in the world working out there. And I may be working right now, but I'm not deaf. I'm thinking about everyone who's without work out there right now, and I just wanted to let you know I'm thinking of you, and I just wanted to say that, care about you.
Yeah. No, I completely agree, and I'm glad you said that, Jeff. Yeah, it's really heartbreaking to see, what's some of the posts and the struggles and yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think part of it obviously is the economics, and
Yeah.
a part of it, like we spoke about yesterday, is we love this stuff. Like, not
Yeah,
being
that's
able to
right.
do what we love
Yeah, that's
is
a big
rough.
part of it. That's the big part of it. So that's what hit me hard when I was driving from South Dakota to here to do this is and be home for the weekend with the family, is that it just hit me like a ton of bricks. It's like it yeah, we're out of work, but the other big component is like how much we love the job that we do. We are one of the lucky few that actually do really love what we do. So not being able to do it hurts a lot as well. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's so true. So that's why I wanted to say that, thinking about y'all out there that are without work, and my stay strong, and my thoughts are with you, and I appreciate everyone. I appreciate y'all.
Here, here. All right. Well, look, on that note, thank you, Jeff. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Keep the ideas coming for future videos. GothamSound.tv. We're on all the social platforms. Have a great one. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. See you guys.